All right, let's go. All right, Tim, what do you got today?
Well, Dad, Cindy, we were talking last week that we thought there were more fights so far.
There's more fights. There's twice as many fights in the league as there was last year.
Right. Last year there was 11 going into the weekend, and this year there was 24.
Wow.
So,
24.
a big
Yeah,
jump.
over.
Entertaining.
And there was a few fights last night.
Oh, yeah. Evander Kane did a good one with Brendan Dillon. Boy,
That was a good one.
that was a good one. So, Cindy, you brought up a good point.
I did, yeah. I thought I had a good question for you with the fights. There seemed to be that the guys are really mad, and I asked you, were you ever really angry during a fight?
I was never. No, I had to fight. The guys now, they are really angry. They when they're throwing them, I don't know how they don't break their hands.
Yeah, there was a couple of big ones the other day.
Boy, and cuts in their hands.
So you were the enforcer, and you just had to fight to keep your job,
You said you liked it.
I didn't mind it. I didn't mind fighting, but I wasn't the enforcer. I wasn't going out looking for trouble. And like Reeves, I like the way he plays. He's looking for trouble all the time. Every time he goes out, I used to play regular, and
yeah, that's the difference. You played regular. He gets 2 shifts a period. I thought Keith would play him a bit more.
Yeah, I thought he would play him more. I thought he'd play him, like Probert used to play. Probert took a regular shift.
Yeah, he got 20-some goals one year.
Yeah, he got 26
demeaning.
goals, I think he got.
Don't you think it's demeaning to a player when they just sit there and you get thrown out like that?
I don't know. I guess he's getting enough dough. He doesn't have to worry about it, but I thought he'd play him a little more.
I really thought in Florida, Leafs played Florida, and they got beat 4-1. I thought he'd set the tone and go after somebody. A little bit of payback from...
But nobody wants to go with him. He's so big.
Anyhow, so who do you think has the most fights in the NHL right as of now? What team has the most?
I don't know.
The Las Vegas Golden Knights, undefeated.
Oh, yeah. Vegas was the most penalized team for fighting last year, right?
Yep.
And
they're leading the league this year.
They're leading the league again this year in the fight. So looks like they're going to win again.
But it's funny, though, Dad, you and I were talking. It seems like the West is a lot rougher than the East.
No, there's no doubt about that one. You watch the East play here, and it's not bad. But holy damn, out West, they take no prisoners. When they hit, they hit. They mean to hit. When I used to coach, what is this here? The coach tells me to hit, I have to hit, and don't give me that I can't say, don't give me that stuff. When you hit a guy, you hit him, you mean it.
Well, I was watching the Edmonton game last night. Edmonton-Winnipeg, which is a good game, was till 1 o'clock in the morning. But there was something I saw that I know that you hated, was an Edmonton Oiler hit a pretty good check on a Winnipeg Jet player, and the Jet player slashed him and got a 2-minute penalty. That used to be your cardinal sin.
Oh, you really hurt him, didn't you? Oh, yeah, you really hurt him. You really hurt him, yes. You hit him on the shin pads. Oh, that really hurt him.
I remember you used to give Kenny Hodge, because he used to get a lot of slashing penalties.
Oh, that Kenny Hodge. Anyhow, I don't want to get into him. And, he went to New York.
Yeah.
One of the greatest trades of all time.
Yeah, John Ferguson, that's what he says. He goes, it was the worst trade general manager ever made, Kenny Hodge for Ricky Middleton.
Well, that was Phil. He said, get me Kenny Hodge and I'll get 50 goals. He did get 20-some goals.
Yeah, actually, out of that whole trade, who was the best player with them was Vadnais.
Oh, Vadnais. We didn't want to give up Vadnais, but we had to give him up. And I'd give up anybody for Rell and Park. And both of them one had a bad knee and one had a bad back.
Well, here's the thing, Dad, that we were talking a little bit. But Winnipeg beat Edmonton yesterday, and Hellebuck stole that game.
Hellebuck. When he feels like playing, boy, there's nobody better.
Edmonton should have won that game last night. No, like about 6-2 or something. But McDavid, he hurt his back or hurt his hip. He didn't play the last 5 minutes of the game. Like, they played Draisaitl and McDavid to death. Like,
so they should.
Right, but they're going to wear them out, right?
Well, I don't know. What I would do, if I used to do with Park, and I used to play them a lot during the game, and I knew Rattel's back was bad. I used to give him the day off.
Well, I was asking you last night. It was Saturday. We were watching the game, and I questioned why would they use their top scorers like Marner and Matthews and all that to kill penalties, because they play.
I have no idea, Cindy.
And you couldn't answer that, and I go, are they going to get tired by the end because they?
Let me put it this way to you: the guys that we had who were on the fourth line, they were on the ice before the referee put his hand down.
Well, that's what I was asking you too. In your day, you didn't call them first, second, and third and fourth line, because I once again that sort of labels you as in, oh well, the first line, and I'm not on the first line and stuff like that.
Well, the fourth line used to go up and play in the wing. But
it used to be like when you were with the Bruins. It used to be Peter McNabb's line, because you just called it by the center, right?
Centers,
I'm
right.
Peter, Ratties. I used to say, and the word they use all the time is "let's go."
And I remember when you used to use, let's call it the fourth line, which is your penalty killers. I can remember it was so much fun when you used to put them on the power play if you were leading big.
If we were leading by 5-1 or something like that, they'd be on the power play. And it's pretty good that the players didn't, they'd have bonuses for goals and that, and the guys kind of given up. The other team had kind of given up. And they didn't get mad.
So did the players kind of get mad if Rell and Park had a day off and you were kind of grinding?
It didn't matter. It was general manager Harry never ever watched the practices.
Because you said that
last night. Practices were so bad, I guess.
You said that last night, Dad. I said, if these guys are going to get tired, and you actually said that if you were the coach, you'd give them an optional practice and tell them not to show up for practice.
I would tell them not to show up for the practice. And I remember the first time I told Jean Rattel, and I'd give him a day off. He looked forward to it.
Towards the end, yeah.
They'd have to, right? They would enjoy.
And I used to give Park day off too after he lost all our weight.
But you're a coach that doesn't care or didn't care about what management thought. Where a guy like the Leaf coach, he's going to say if they don't play good the next game and you gave him a day off, they're going to be. The upper management's going to go, well, there you go. You gave him the day off, and look what happened.
I think Rhodes was right. I should have been general manager and coach.
So, Cindy and Dad, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Spreads.ca. They're a Canadian-owned online casino and sportsbook. If you sign up now and use the promo GRAPES, they'll match your deposit up to $250. You get 10 spins on the big wheel for some big dough. And
pretty good.
Your first sports bet, they'll spot you $25. And, this is their big time. It's always fun putting a couple of bucks on the game.
No, I don't know what it is. It makes you feel better, as if you're into the game or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But you make.
So let's talk about one team, Dad, that's kind of struggling now is Calgary.
I don't understand. Calgary, last year, they outshoot the teams. They outhit the teams. They do everything out, and they still lose. I'm sorry to say that I have to put it on the
Markstrom. Yeah.
And I don't like to mention the names, but there are some goalies that I had or I played with, and at the end of the game, you'd say, well, it's even in shots, or they get a little more shot. You can't fool me. I played with a guy. If we were ahead, he played terrific. If we got behind and we tied it up, you always knew that he was going to let in that one, and boy, that was a tough way to play.
Yeah, because Calgary so far they've outshot 4 out of 5 games they've shot.
Yeah, and out-hit.
And out-hit. Yeah, you're right, Dad, because, last year was Sutter. You're right. They had the second most shots for, the second least shots against. They out-hit everybody. So it's the same story, And again, 4 out of 5 games, they outshot the teams.
Yeah.
I don't think people realize how important the shots are, even to the players, right? Because I remember there was a big kerfuffle in Boston about the shot clock.
Let me tell you a story about how that happened. I was it was my first year back at the bench, and I noticed, and the guys would keep looking at the clock all the time.
Right. Just for people, this was at the Boston Gardens. They had an actual, just a shot clock that was up against the wall.
Yeah.
Right, so everybody could see.
And been there for 30 years.
It was sort of in the corner behind the goalie,
Yeah,
so the goalie
like
didn't
to the
have
right,
to look
to
at
the-
it.
To the right of the second period.
Right.
And I see the guys, and then I heard Phil say, "No, sure, I had a shot, and he didn't put it up. I'll be a son of a bitch." Well, they're looking more at the clock than they are than winning the hockey game.
Man, Gilly wasn't. He was always looking at the clock.
He was always looking at the clock because if he didn't get the shots, it would go against his record, and he was always worried about records and stuff like that.
So, in other words, the forwards wanted a lot of shots, and the goalie.
Well, they wanted shots on net.
That's right.
And if they didn't get a shot on net, they were ticked off. They were more worried about the shot clock than they were winning. And I remember I told Harry, I said, "Harry, I want that clock cut." And he says, "That clock has been there for about 40 years." I said, "Harry, I'm not kidding." I said, "If that clock's there at the end of the first period, I'm going up and I'm ripping it right off the wall." And he must have pitied me because it wasn't there the next game.
So, Cindy and Dad, just to let you know, we've hit 5.5 million downloads.
Holy dynamite.
So I'll give you the top 10 countries that
Oh,
we're
yeah,
at
give me the
right
top-
now, because it kind of jumbles around. So these are the top 10 countries the last 2 weeks.
It's Canada.
Canada first, U.S. second. Australia is always third.
Isn't that funny? Australia.
It's third. Fourth is UK.
Yeah.
Fifth is Russia. Sixth is Costa Rica.
There's a lot of Canadians.
Costa Rica.
Well,
Yeah.
there's a lot of Canadians down there.
Yeah.
They have their
Then Aruba. Again, probably a lot of Canadians down.
transplanted rich Canadians.
Or snowbirds, right? Then Japan. Then Sweden and Mexico.
Huh. Mexico.
Yeah, so that's it. So anybody's listening, tell us where you're listening from. Go on Dad's Twitter account, Don Cherry, and tell us where you're listening from, because it'd be interesting to hear
Yeah.
where you're listening from, and if you're transplanted Canadian or if you're just somebody from that country that likes listening to hockey podcasts.
Yeah.
So a couple quick questions, Dad. Vancouver's playing well. Are they for real?
Well, we're talking behind the bench. When he was behind the bench before, he was sort of quiet and nice. And everything. He is really vocal back at that bench.
I think last year he was just kind of getting the lay of the land.
Well, then whatever he's doing right.
Yeah. Well, Demko's playing well, and that's the big
Well,
difference.
you get goaltender playing right.
Yeah. And the other people are asking, should Oiler fans be worried?
Oiler fans, I would start worrying. Yes, Tim. I say they should start worrying. I think the coach should start worrying too.
So the other thing, too, is Boston Bruins, everybody wrote them off. They're
Yeah.
undefeated.
And they're still undefeated.
Detroit, 4-1. Stevie Yzerman's kind of turning that around.
Yeah, well, we hope Stevie. You know what I think of Stevie Yzerman?
And so that Avalanche, though, they look like they're pretty much the cream of
Holy
the crop.
diner, they look a force.
Yeah. And so does Vegas.
Yeah, I still like the Stars, boy. I still like that Colorado club. I'll tell you, boy. When they turn it on, they can really turn it on. And that McKinnon, boy, when he turns it on, he's almost impossible to stop.
Yeah. I'd like to bet McDavid and McKinnon at the red line, at the goal line, and to the other goal line. If
Yeah.
you say 1, 2, 3, go, who'd win?
That'd be a tough one to.
I think I'd put my money on McKinnon.
Dad, we have a question from Twitter. He's Amric1, so you know he's from Rochester. And
Yeah.
it says, Don, on the last podcast, you talked about the goalies you coached. And what about some of the goalies you played with, such as Bobby Perreault,
Bobby
which I remember too.
Do you remember?
I remember Bobby Perreault.
He was a small little guy. He was only
Short.
5'7".
Yeah. And I remember him. He was always kissing his ring all the time after the national.
After a save.
Yeah, and the national anthem too.
And Bobby, he's from Three Rivers, Quebec. And you know about Three Rivers, Quebec.
Oh, yes,
Someday
yeah.
we'll go into that.
Yeah.
I remember Bobby Perreault used to throw the puck in the corners. And in the far corner, he'd make the save. Or if he made a save, he'd steer it to the far corner, and I'd get my brains pounded out. He used to say, "Bobby, put it behind the net, toy. Give me a chance." But he had a habit. He was 31 years old. He played for Boston Bruins. He walked right into the Montreal Canadiens, and they had a powerful club and beat them 5-0. They thought And, you know, this
Yeah,
is,
you were saying that they were so powerful back then that the original rule was when you had a penalty, you had to stay off the ice for the full 2 minutes. And they would score so many goals on the power play that they had to put a rule in, and once you scored, the guy had to go back on.
that's how powerful they were.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Who knew?
Well,
He was a small goalie, though, eh? Like, he wasn't very big.
he was a small goaltender, and he didn't wait. And some reason, I remember Frank Mihaljevic just letting a shot goal, and it just missed his head. And I remember him running after Frank Mihaljevic, screaming and hollering, "You big..."
Really? So
I can't say what he said.
Yeah.
But anyhow,
But you played with him in Rochester, right?
I played with him in Rochester. We won 4 AHL championships. They call him Caller. I don't know why. I don't know why they call him Caller. Oh, Frank Caller, I guess.
I guess, yeah.
Anyhow, he was 31 years old, and like I said, he went in and played for Boston. He was happy-go-lucky goalie. I remember one time we were in Providence, and he disappeared, like they just skated right off the ice and disappeared. And we thought he was hurt or something, you know, he got hurt. And he came back, and I said, "Bobby," I went back at the time, and I said, "Bobby, what the heck's going on?" He said, "Oh, don't worry, caca."
Did he wear a mask?
No, he never.
That was in the era of imagine
No,
that.
he never wore a mask.
A guy like him, though, so back that he was original 6, right? They usually had one goalie on the team. So guess who he had to go up against?
Yeah, now let me just read you the story. You told me this before. You had Gump Worsley in Montreal. Yeah, you're not going to beat up Gump Worsley. You had Bauer and Sawchuk in Toronto. You had Roger Crozier in Detroit. Boston, you had Perrant and Cheevers. Geez, goalies were pretty good back in those days.
Yeah.
And the Hawks, they had Glenn Hall. Well, Glenn Hall paid 500 and... Well, how many did...
Well, I don't know, some 500 consecutive games or something like that.
He paid straight games. That'll never be broken. And in the New York Rangers had Cesar Maniego and Giacomin.
So
And
all those guys, except I think for Crozier, in the Hall of Fame. So
Yeah.
a guy like Bobby Perreault, how is he going to make where's he going to go?
now they have three goaltenders.
goalies.
And he was in a boxer, too. What was that story he told?
He was boxer. What was his nickname? I forget.
Flamingo Kid.
The Flamingo Kid. So he was boxing, and he weighed he was 145 pounds, and he was in the dressing room, and he says, I was looking across this great big guy who was about 180, and he said, "Who are you fighting?" And he goes, "I'm fighting you." And he goes, "I got my brains pounded out the first ring," and I come back to my corner and said, "Why didn't you throw in the towel?" And the guy goes, "Well, I would have, but I left it in the dressing room."
Boxing, they call him the Flamingo Kid, like I said, and he had a monkey. He used to have a monkey run with. I didn't know he was such a strange guy. Phil Watson, who was his coach, and called him fat and lazy.
Phil Watson, he called Gump fat too.
And he must have something. He was a thin guy. He had something about fat guys, and he ended up with Bobby Perreault and Gump Worsley. He was the youngest goalie. Hall was 31 at the same time. Sawchuk was 32, and Jacques Plante was 33. And Johnny Bauer, geez, how old? Remember, they used to talk about him he was in his 40s when he played.
Yeah.
He was a dynamite goaltender.
And the interesting thing was Sports Illustrated did a whole article on him.
And they call him the happy-go-lucky goalie. And believe me, he was always happy. He used to hang around with less stuff, and used to call him two. And I used to say, why do you call him two? He says, Duffy used to come up and say, "Have you got $2 you could lend me?" And he used to call Duffy two.